Boy, it's really tough to do a motorcycle-based intro after just doing the Mad Max movies. I could do the intro like Tom Hardy or something.
Hi, welcome to Film Station. My name is Douglas Campbell. Today we're talking about Bikeriders.
Based on the Bikeriders photo book by Danny Lyon, the film follows the operations of the Vandals Motorcycle Club from the mid-1960s into the 70s, and the changing cultural tides within their society as their organization grows. I'm not entirely sure how faithful this film is compared to Lyon's work, or even the characters themselves, their real-life counterparts. One of the things that I really liked about this movie is the fact that it's based on a journalistic work, and they didn't really stray too far away from the journalism that it took to make this book a reality. And in doing so, it kind of gave this film a verisimilitude that I haven't really seen in too many bigger budget movies these days. What adds to that realism, it's a variety of things, really. It's the fact they were able to find locations that looked very true to the 60s transitioning into the 70s. It's the wardrobe of all the bikers. Like, they felt very unique to everybody, even background characters. And even acting wise, like, everybody felt like real people. Even though it's like a really stacked cast, like, everyone just felt kind of like a real person. And no one really stole the spotlight because it felt like everyone was on a playing field. Even to how they talked. Now, I don't even know if they used Lyon's actual tapes that he recorded interviews with. It felt so natural in a way that I haven't really seen it in many other movies that weren't just straight up documentaries. How they talked, how they shoot the shit about their bikes, it felt very true. Like, I've been to some car shows and even some campgrounds where some bikers hanged out, or not even bikers, but people who would ride on their motorcycles outside of their office jobs, and like, it sounded very true. And it was quite fascinating to see. It really felt like I was a fly on the wall looking at this club. What's interesting about the narrative is that it doesn't necessarily have a straightforward beginning, middle, and an end. Because the runtime is constructed of Lyons basically interviewing the different members of this motorcycle club. And you get different perspectives from each of these guys that ultimately lead to a timeline being presented in front of you. And it's not until he leaves that you get more of a narrative towards the latter middle to the end. The film itself, even though there are different perspectives, you do get a lot of the story from Jodie Comer's Kathy character. And she is funny to watch because if you know what her accent sounds like outside the movies, it's kind of interesting to see her put on this accent that's very Midwestern. Even though everybody within the movie is on the same level and there really isn't too much of a background actor or a main character actor or a side character, they all kind of blend in and they know their roles well. Of the cast, Tom Hardy, Jodie Comer, and Austin Butler, they do find a way to stand out but not be the lead of the movie. They give realistic performances for what the story needs and how it's being presented. Even though Tom Hardy's voice is really ridiculous in this movie.
Oh, well, you know what that means. That means it's time for intermission.
So today's popcorn is chocolate espresso martini. Now, I'm not a big espresso drinker, but I mean, this could be good. Let's open it up. I'm recording this at like 10 something at night. This will surely wake me up. Ooh. Okay, it has an interesting feel. It has kind of a sticky feel when I reached into the bag. It does smell a lot more like chocolate than espresso. But it does smell a bit more like coffee beans when you smell the whole bag. It's kind of interesting. I mean, if you look in there, it's got kind of a weird it has kind of a weird look to it. I guess we might as well try it then, see what it's like. Alright, so it has a caramel corn taste at first, and I thought, oh, that's kind of different, that's kind of nice. And then immediately it goes downhill. It's has kind of a gross aftertaste.
Why are you trying it again?
You have to try it multiple times, Steph. I don't know. 4 out of 10.
Maybe a third time.
You know, you're right. Maybe a third time. Hold on. You know, I'm actually starting to taste that coffee.
Maybe a fourth time.
No, 3's enough. That's a 3 out of 10. Now, what will make or break this movie for people, it is the pacing. Because I don't really try to watch trailers, but I did happen to watch a little bit of the trailer a while ago, and it really sells this film as a Goodfellas on motorcycles. It's badass and fast and dangerous and And I think comparing it to Goodfellas, although this is a little bit of a slower pace, it is comparable. I can understand how people could compare it to Goodfellas. But the thing is, this film, because it is taking the approach of I'm interviewing these different people, it's not that fast-paced. Although this movie takes the approach of this guy who's not even a major character, he's just very off to the side, and it's just him interviewing these people, and that's how the narrative is formed. The film is very deliberately and slowly paced to kind of resemble the pacing of real life. I enjoy this movie quite a bit, but if there's one issue I do have, it's that the main plot device of Lion interviewing these people that brings the loosest of threads somewhat together, it's that eventually towards the middle of the movie, whether I'm sure this is probably real life or maybe it's not, but essentially that character leaves, and in doing so, the plot just feels for a while slower and directionless for a little bit, and things just seem to grind even more to a halt. Whereas I'm sure if he realistically stuck around, it wouldn't feel as slow. It probably would have kept going. The thing is, I can't really change real life ultimately, and even if that's accurate to what actually happened, the film felt super slow towards the middle, and it really messed up the pacing even more. Now, despite this movie being incredibly slow, I actually had a really great time with Bikeriders. It felt like a lazy Sunday movie I could just turn on, and honestly, I could just enjoy watching it because I really enjoyed everything about it, even with the slower pacing. And now, while there isn't an immediate theme within the movie, the one thing I guess I sort of took out of it is that with Tom Hardy's character, he ultimately wanted to create a world just to kind of escape his regular life. And the ideals that he created in the beginning versus what things ultimately became, what you set out to do, things change over time. No matter how much you try to keep the status quo, things will change. Times will change. Things will change. And just how people perceive the things that you do and how they interpret your actions, they ultimately change. Like, what you want to put out there, that's not what people necessarily get. In doing so, for better or worse, these type of things cannot be controlled, and eventually it goes beyond the original meaning. Now, while this wasn't my favorite movie of the year, I certainly was very surprised by The Bikeriders. This is the type of movie that, even with the slower pacing, I enjoyed so much about it, from the performances and the setting and the aesthetic and how the story was presented that I could watch it on a lazy Sunday afternoon and I would get a lot out of it. And while for now my score might not be very high, I'd give this a 6.5 to maybe 7 out of 10. I definitely want to revisit this someday. And honestly, my opinion could change then. We'll see. This week's recommendation, when it comes to what the movie The Bikeriders is about, oh boy, this is going to take us back to the 8th or 9th grade with this one. I'm recommending Francis Ford Coppola's adaptation of S.E. Hinton's classic novel, The Outsiders. In a small Oklahoma town in 1964, the rivalry between two gangs, the poor greasers and the rich Socs, heat up when one gang member accidentally kills a member of the other. I grew up reading the book for school, and comparing it to The Bikeriders, I feel like it would be actually a pretty good pairing, honestly. Because S.E. Hinton, when she was growing up, she based her source material off of what was happening in her hometown. And naturally, considering that the Bikeriders are based on reality as well, it makes sense that something real would go with something real. Also, if you've read the book, it's pretty much beat per beat, and for some people that's good, for other people it's not, but I genuinely enjoyed the book The Outsiders, enjoyed that movie as well, and I would certainly recommend it. Well, that's all the time we have for today here at Film Stash. My name is Douglas Campbell, and if you excuse me, I gotta add to the stash.